Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Kirklees Library's broadcast. It's a chilly Kirklees evening this evening, but we're thrilled to be able to bring you a lovely warm evening of entertainment, I'm absolutely certain. We're really lucky this evening to be able to bring best-selling crime writer Jessie Keane to Kirklees Libraries. Jessie's the author of 17 books, with book sales, I love this figure, exceeding 6.5 million sales sold, of which many will have been in public libraries across the country. She's a well-known author in the library service and well-borrowed author as well. This evening, we'll get a chance to talk to Jessie to find out more about herself, more about her books, and most importantly, let me get my copy, more about her brand new book, Never Go Back, which was published just at the beginning of February. If you want to ask any questions during the evening, please, we want to hear from you. We love having your questions. All you need to do, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, is just put your messages into the chat. We'll get them, and then we'll keep them and we'll bring them on at the end. So you'll all get a chance to have your questions posed to Jessie during the evening. So you're not here to listen to me. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Jessie Keane. Jessie, good evening and welcome to chilly Kirklees.
Good evening, Kirsty. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm nice and warm at the moment, so I'm not outside in the snow.
Okay?
So.
Yeah,
Yes, we're okay.
Wrapped
up nice and warm. Thank you. We're really pleased to have you on tonight. Really pleased to see you. So, but I think we want to find out more about you straight away. If you're ready for some questions.
Okay.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, I think we'll start with talking about Never Go Back. So, for those of you that haven't seen the book yet, either in your local bookshops or your local library, this is Jessie's new book, Never Go Back. Fantastic. Okay. So, Jessie, for anyone in the audience who has had a chance to either pick up a copy or borrow a copy from their local library, would you be able to give us a brief introduction to the book and tell us what inspired you to write this novel?
Well, it's it's a bit of a double celebration this year because I've been in the business now, the writing business, for 15 years, which is amazing to me, really. And also, this is the 7th Annie Carter book, this Never Go Back. And it's basically, it sort of, it just weaves its way through from about the 1950s through to about the 1990s. And you see Annie Carter as a young child, as a baby, actually, and then all the way through, and Max is coming in and he's a gangster and teenage years, and finally they meet and so on and so forth. And it just weaves this story right the way through, which runs sort of alongside the other books. And it's independent from, but also just skirting along the side of it. Yeah.
So was there a reason that you... Because you've been writing your Jessie. I'm having a moment there. I could just hear a bit of reverb there. Put your books for Annie for a number of years now. Was there a reason that you decided to kind of go back and kind of retell or kind of investigate or research and go into the details of her life before the novels, before you started them later on?
Well, it just it started an idea with me about Max's mother, Queenie, who was mentioned several times in the other books, and really a strong character. And I thought the readers know almost nothing about Queenie, and so I started just enlarging on Queenie, and then of course Annie came in, and the whole thing started to roll, because that's the way I write. I don't write sort of in a very disciplined fashion. I write madly, really. I start with a character, something happens to them, and then I just take it from there and roll on. I mean, I wish I could plot things, but I can't. It's hopeless. I just have to, see how it evolves, really, which is what I did with this book. And I think it turned out pretty well, really. Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
So I was just thinking, because you had the books that you'd already written and that kind of, the structure and the plots already, for those ones already kind of plotted out, that then to be able to kind of bring it back and to write as you've just described, that sounds like how you kept the stories all clear in your head. Was that quite a challenge then, writing organically like that?
It was a heck of a challenge. Yeah, it was really. I'm notoriously bad on timelines. I mean, my first book, Dirty Game, the first Annie Carter book, my then editor sat me down and I remember in a cafe it was in London, and he said to me, what's the timeline on this thing, on this book? And he said, I love this book. What's the timeline? And I didn't have a single solitary clue what he was talking about. I really had no idea. So yeah, I'm really bad at timelines. So I had to keep checking and checking and checking all the way through just to make sure that I hadn't come adrift somewhere. Because it can happen. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. We always like to ask authors when we have them on, because I'll come on to things we do in Kirklees a little bit later, but we always like to ask about how they plan and they plot. So I think you're the first one that's kind of talked about that kind of very organic and just so you just have an idea and you just have to write it down. Is that how it comes then to you?
And sometimes, I mean, the book I'm writing at the moment, the next book after this one, I started at one point, then I realised that I have to go further back again. I have to go back to another point. So I'm going back at the moment and writing that little bit up, and then I'll have to come back to the present day and carry on. But it seems to work, so why worry?
Oh, perfect. Absolutely, why worry? I like that. One of the things I was going to ask about, because you're absolutely right, the book goes through all these different decades. And I thought you captured, there was something, I can't remember what it was, but there was something you mentioned. I thought, oh, I remember that from my childhood really clearly. But do you have a particular kind of time period that you enjoy writing for the most? I mean, do you like the contemporary, or do you like writing kind of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s?
I love the 60s is my absolute favourite. I really love the 60s. It was just so stylish, wasn't it? And this was wonderful. You had the Beatles and the Stones and the Gangsters and the Craze, and it's fabulous. I love that period of time. Yeah, definitely the 60s is my favourite.
So do you so when you have a favorite, did you find that easier to write then? Does it come more easily to you when you've got that kind of connection and that kind of enjoyment? Does that make it easier?
I suppose a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I've got so used to writing. I mean, I've been back to the 1920s, 1930s in other books, so it's no great big deal to sort of just swap and change around. I've got this huge book called The Chronicle of the 20th Century, and it's a huge doorstop of a thing. And I always refer to that, and it's got everything, absolutely everything that you could possibly want to know. So yeah, that's very useful.
I was going to ask you about how you research, but I think we found out one of your big clues there. Because I was also going to ask about when it comes to research, because you also within this book there is, and I'm very careful because I'm very aware it's very new, not to give anything away that I shouldn't give away, but the police are one of the elements within this story. So when you write about something that's as recognizable as the police, do you do research with the police? Do you have someone that you can talk to make sure that you've got that kind of procedural stuff in place, or is it just
I do have someone I can refer to if I'm dubious about something. But I always remember the late great Ruth Rendell saying, "Oh, I just make it up." And I thought, what? And she was absolutely fantastic. So I don't worry too much, but I have got somebody to refer to. If I think I'm going a bit wrong, then I'll go back to her and she'll put me straight, hopefully.
Yeah. Do you ever get anyone? I was thinking about this earlier as well about the internet. I was reading something that the people were, enjoying to comment and pass judgment on online for someone else. Do you get a lot of sort of feedback and kind of do people pick you up on things, and do you notice much of that through the internet, or
yeah, you do get I did have one gentleman who said, "Oh, there's a spelling mistake on page. Was it 420 or something?" Well, I am human. I'm not, a machine. So stop. But yeah, you do get quite a few sort of comments. But as for reviews, I mean, I think if I were to look on Amazon at the reviews, it would scare me to death. So I try not to. I think it's rather like actors, if they got a negative review, they remember it forever, and a good review is just one of many. So let it go is my advice on that.
Absolutely. I did see someone that one of the famous actresses had said today, never Google yourself. Never Google yourself. It's just,
you'll be horrified.
That way, just madness lies. Yes, absolutely. Very good advice. Yeah. Right. Okay. So what else have I got? Well, we wandered around my questions here. Wonderful. So yes. given that it's International Women's Day during this week, we've just been celebrating International Women's Day, and you're well known for writing very strong female leading characters in your books. Is this something that you, is it something that kind of drives you, this kind of wanting to have that kind of character front and center? Is this an area that you enjoy writing, that you want to tell these stories? Is this something that kind of just kind of pushes you to be a writer?
I think when I first started writing Annie Carter, for instance, she came very naturally to me. That sort of very in-your-face, strong sort of character came very naturally to me. I think it's something to do with growing up in a male-dominated environment. It sort of gives you a more masculine sort of edge, I suppose. So yeah, it's strange. I think it's to do with growing up with brothers rather than sisters, maybe.
Oh, I grew up with brothers as well. That's very interesting. Yes.
Ah, there you are. You see.
There we are. I noticed these things.
Yeah. I think it gives us a little masculine edge, I think.
I'm sure all my colleagues are now. Yes, it's going. Very interesting. And so, because yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I am a feminist. I mean, I have always been a feminist. Maybe again because of growing up as the youngest and 7 older brothers, and yeah, it could be that. Yeah,
interesting. So in preparing for tonight, I was reading about some of your life experiences, which are extraordinary life experiences. Do you find that you have used them as inspiration, or some of your writing reflects some of the experiences that you had growing up? Because you've not had what I would, what people would call a traditional kind of birth to now kind of life story, have you? So is that kind of it? Yes. Do you find that reflected in your writing, or do you? Would you stay away?
I don't think I ever intended that it should, but I think it does, definitely. I think it sort of comes through time and again. But I say, just writing thrillers, it seemed to come very naturally to me. And writing, before I wrote thrillers, I wrote westerns, little puppet shows, the silly things, Star Trek episodes, rom-coms. And finally, I got hold of this poor chap, this agent, and said to him, "Please, will you be my agent? And here's a comedy crime that I've written." And he said, "Stop right there." He said, "Nobody ever made money from comedy crime. Drop it." So, and he said, "Go away and try a straight crime novel." And the minute I did, he was absolutely spot on, because the minute I did, it just flowed. It was just so much easier. And they talk about writers finding their voice, don't they? But I finally found mine at that point. Yeah.
Brilliant. So would you ever consider trying, now that you've kind of established, you found your voice, would you ever go back to writing another Star Trek episode? I mean, Star Trek and Star Wars is massive business nowadays. Or would you go back and try others? Are there others that you've not tried that intrigue you?
I think maybe a children's book. I think I started a children's book not too long ago, and I thought, I did get it out, dust it off, and thought, it's not too bad. So maybe that, but not Star Trek, I don't know. I think I've outgrown that a bit now.
Kirklees is the land of Jean-Luc Picard, you see. We are.
Oh, yeah.
We came from Murfield. Anyway, but yeah, children's books are wonderful. I mean, that's a fertile ground, isn't it, as well?
It really is. Yeah. I think
if looking,
that.
Yeah, discerning viewers, or discerning readers rather. Discerning readers, you won't get better than a child. Absolutely. Absolutely. Brilliant. Okay, cool. So right, yes. So we've talked about your voice. So in Never Go Back, I should have this behind me, but I haven't got room behind me. If we'd been in the library, which we were supposed to be today, you'd have had a lovely books behind us. So in the book, Never Go Back, you've got a number of different voices, different characters, the perspective that we see going through. So we've got Nora, Queenie, Bruno, Max, and of course Annie. Are there voices that you find easier to write for, that you enjoy more, or does it all just come from the same place for you?
I think it all does come from the same place for me. It's not a great trial for me to switch between characters, particularly between the female and the male characters. I find that quite easy, really, to do that a little bit. That's fine. Yeah, it's quite nice, isn't it, to have all these different ones? Yeah, it's lovely to follow them all through. I love it.
Yeah, it was nice to follow the stories because you could clearly follow the stories of each person. It was yes, it's really.
I mean, that looks quite easy, but actually in practice, you're there with this hard copy of this great big book, and you're just taking chapters from here and putting them there, and taking that bit out of there, and taking that paragraph, and it's like a paper chase. It's crazy. But the few days before I actually send it off to my editor, it's just this office is just absolutely crazy. I can tell you, it really is.
Do you write freehand or do you use a computer? Just very basic question.
I use a computer, and I bash all the keys about. All the numbers have gone, and all the letters have gone off the keys. I'm so heavy-handed that I've knocked them all off. So.
Bless your heart. Bless you. So just guessing now, are we just guessing? So the next book could be wonderful. Back to Star Trek again. It could be completely a whole new language you might create. Loving it. Do you with your character? I know that some of these characters have appeared in other books, so it maybe not quite as relevant for this book. But do you ever find that you base any of your characters around, maybe unintentionally, maybe sometimes, but around real people, or you're inspired by real people? I always think sitting on the bus, I use public transport a lot, and I always think the things you hear on public transport, there's whole massive reams of stories on there. I tell you, the voices that you hear. But do you ever kind of look for those inspirations, or are they all just out of your head?
I don't actually look for them, but it's irresistible, isn't it, really, to listen to other people's conversations. Think, oh yeah, that's really fascinating. And I've been told off for this as well in a restaurant. Don't listen to other people's conversations. It's not your business. Stop it. So yeah, I have done that. But it's a funny thing. I think it's a writer's ear, isn't it? You sort of, you try not to do it, but you do it. You do. I'll just store that away for later. And the character of Max Carter, for instance, I actually met the man who inspired Max Carter when I was very young and innocent, sort of 15, 16 years old, in Soho. And he was absolutely fabulous. I saw this chap and I thought, wow, he had that wonderful look about him, like a bit like sort of Dominic Cooper, that sort of very striking dark look. And I thought I must put that man in a book one of these days. He's got to go in. And sure enough, he did. Max Carter. Yeah.
Fantastic. I wonder if we'd love to know if people recognise themselves when that happens. If they kind of see, they can, fascinating.
Very good.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so when I was, we touched a little bit on gangs and that kind of London and that kind of period, the 60s. When I was reading Never Go Back, during lockdown, we were really lucky. Very lucky again. We had social historian Carl Chin came and did a talk with us. He wrote Peaky Blinders: The Real Story. I think it was the University of Birmingham.
Great.
Carl Chin. It was extraordinary. So it's still available on our YouTube channel if anyone didn't get a chance to see it. But when I was reading your book, I was thinking back to the conversation we had with Carl. And there was lots of things that really resonated, and very similar experiences, and kind of that kind of culture in the big cities in the time. But there was one thing in particular that when we were talking with Carl, we were talking about the importance of having those unheard voices, those voices that during that period, those stories didn't get told, those voices didn't get heard. So I was thinking in particular, and I'm be very careful not to talk about what happens, but there's that moment with Queenie's life where there's a very significant decision that she doesn't really have control over, even though she's a very strong character. And I wondered again whether this is something that there's kind of unheard voices. And again, I was thinking back to your youth and your experiences you had kind of as a teenager and a young person, whether those might have kind of maybe made you think and kind of focus maybe on some of those voices that you wanted to kind of, whether you do it unconsciously or consciously. But I just wondered if that's something that kind of resonates with you as well, bringing those voices to the fore, those stories.
I think that it's very much unconscious. I think it's for a writer, it's your subconscious mind is ticking away the whole time, and it's like I always say, it's like a download. You just finish writing in the morning, you look at it in the afternoon and chuck a bit away and keep a bit and think, oh, that's okay, and just think of other things, do other things. And then by the next morning, I've got this download that's come through. I've just scribbled it down on a piece of paper. I met somebody the other day who does it on their iPhone, just jots it down in there. But I just do it on a bit of paper by the side of the bed. And and that's your next chapter. It's there. But it's actually very strange when you think about it. You're just getting these constant updates coming through to you. But it's rather nice, actually. I enjoy it. I love writing. I'm at my happiest when I'm writing, without a doubt. That's it for me. I just love it. So it's all good.
Isn't that great to be able to do something for a job that you love? I mean, I always think people are blessed. That's the dream, isn't it?
It really is, very much so. Yeah, love it.
So I'm going to come back onto gangs, but talking about Peaky Blinders, and I think I've seen this question's been asked to you before, but we'll have it in Kirklees as well. But there's so much crime on television. That sounds really wrong. Crime dramas on television and on film. Have you ever imagined that your books might, or could you envisage your books being kind of moved and shaped into? Because I think this is this reminded me a lot like a lot of the television programs that we see. Is this something that you would either like, or could you envisage that they could be turned into kind of screenplays?
Yeah, I think every writer dreams of that, don't they? Really, either a TV series or a film. It would be fabulous. And I have had interest in the past. When Dirty Game came out at first, 15 years ago, somebody contacted me and said, "Oh, I'd be interested," and of course, the minute they realised I had an agent by then, who would make sure I wasn't in any way fiddled with, that they dropped the idea. And also, when I wrote Nameless, a Ruby Dark book, that one had some serious interest from a film company. We went to lunch and we sort of talked about it, and it was very good, and took my agent with me, and it all seemed to be going well, and then it just fizzled out like it does sometimes. And I remember hearing about Marion Keyes, and this makes me laugh because I love all Marion's work. She's fabulous. And she said they actually flew her out to Hollywood, and it was sort of first class, 5-star, absolutely wonderful all the way. And she came back home and she never heard from them again. Wow. That was it. It was just, forget it. So
extraordinary.
It's very, very, I mean, my agent is, she is also, well, she was also, I don't know if she still is maybe, Val McDermott's agent. And she says to me, it's never there. It's never there till the fat lady sings. That's her way of putting it. But yeah, it can just die a death, or it can be one of the very few that just sneak through. And it's very few. People think it's a common thing to have it happen, but it's not. It's really not. It's quite unusual. But if it does, it does. It would be nice. It would be nice.
Never say never. Never say never. So we've already heard about Dominic Cooper. So let's just imagine we're in their daydream moment. It's been picked up. Someone's wanting to make a series of it or a film. Have you got ideas of who their characters, which actors might play some of your characters from Never Go Back?
Actually, Dominic Cooper's not a bad idea, is he really, for Max? I always used to think Jason Isaacs for Max.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
For Annie, I like Alison King, who plays Carla, the factory boss in Coronation Street. And I think she is my brain picture of Annie is Alison King. Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. And this lady who's on the cover, she comes very, very close to my original thought on Annie. So yeah, I was very pleased with that, and I loved the gold blocking.
Yes, it is lovely. It's a lovely. It's got a lovely book feel. It's got a lovely book feel. I'm sorry we can't share this with the audience, but it's got a lovely book feel, this one. It's
Feels
beautiful.
really nice, doesn't it?
It does,
And
it does. It's very nice.
I remember saying to my editor years ago, as he said, how big do you want your name to be? I said, massive. I said, as big as you can get it, Wayne. That would be great. And he did. And it's been big ever since. And I think that's good. I love it.
So one of the things we often talk to authors about is that kind of relationship with the kind of the graphics departments of publishing houses, and how much say you get around the book covers. So do you get much input, or is it do you just trust them to do the process?
I do trust them because they're really, really good. But yeah, they send me about 3 or 4 various covers with various models, various outfits, and they say, well, what do you think of this one? Do you like that one? Do you like that? And I say which is my favourite, and they say which they like, and we come together on the final cover. But I think they do a fantastic job. They really do.
It's one of those art forms, isn't it? It's an extraordinary art form, really, if you think about it, because, you know, we all say never judge a book by its cover, but we all do. We all quietly do.
You really do.
We all do. We all do. We all do. We'll decide what the book's about from what it looks like.
Yeah.
So writing about kind of gangs and kind of a bit of violence. It's not graphic violence, but there is a little bit of violence in the book. A little bit. It's okay. We managed. We get managed. But how do you? I mean, I mean, when you mentioned the weapon that Annie had, I had no clue what this was. I thought, where does that come from? These ideas? Is this something again that you research about weaponry, or is this something that you'd come across? How do you?
It was something that I think somebody mentioned to me. I think it was Dick Francis years ago, and he said this Kyoga.
That was it. That was the word.
Yeah. Out this metal bottle, a very handy thing for a woman to have, particularly because it sort of amplifies the force. I thought, oh, that's rather violent. So yes, she's got one of those, and watch out, yeah.
Yes, that was. I thought I've never heard of that. I couldn't quite envisage it in my head, but yes, it was.
Yes. It's a sort of sprung metal ball that just comes out and whack you. Yeah.
There we go. So when it comes to writing violence, is that something that you does it bother you? Do you enjoy it? Do you just is part of the process? How does that come around?
I enjoy it up to a point. I mean, beyond a certain sort of yucky, grisly point, I won't go. I do have a sort of area where I just won't venture. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it doesn't worry me. I mean, I suppose we may wish it wasn't, but it's sort of part of life, isn't it? Really, passion, violence, whatever. Yeah, it's all grist to the mill, isn't it? I mean, Shakespeare didn't shy away from anything like that, did he? Really?
No, there's plays that even we don't talk about those plays. They're really bad. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So we're going to have a reading. I wonder if it's a good point to stop and have a reading now, Jessie. Would you mind reading us a bit of the book just now? Is that okay? And then we'll come back to some more questions about being a writer.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Wonderful, thank you.
I hope you can hear me nicely. Queenie Carter and her sister had always despised one another. She's such a moaner, Queenie said about Nora. She's a bit of a tart, Nora sniffed, disapproving of Queenie's liking for Bill Haley when he got up on stage with that ridiculous kiss curl of his and belted out Shake, Rattle and Roll. Nora had married early, and her husband, a dock worker called Ted Dawkins, had very tidily dropped dead one night after exiting the docks, falling gracefully in the gutter not 6 months after their wedding. He left Nora a young widow with a small sum that she took down to Brighton to set up a bed and breakfast establishment and make a bit of money off the tourists. Queenie was warm-hearted, bold, loud and loving, the polar opposite of her plain, prudish older sister. Queenie fell recklessly in love and married an East End boy, a Carter, who, much to her eventual disappointment, did not drop dead, but lived on and on, lazy, feckless, useless son of a that he was. She named them all herself, her 3 boys, her beloved son, because her ale-soaked liability of a husband was neither use nor ornament. And by the time he made up his mind about anything, she'd already made the decision and acted upon it. He lounged day after day in his chair, complaining about the government, drinking beer, and doing a fabulous impression of very little. Marriage was a huge disappointment to Queenie. She grew bitter and resentful, and she quickly lost interest in the once handsome man she'd wed back in her optimistic girlhood, when she'd still had hopes and dreams to cling to. Bit by bit, all her passion for the man drained away in the face of his apathy, but she had to have some focus, so as the years went by, all her attention was lavished upon her sons, and particularly upon her eldest son, Max. Thank you.
Thank you. The eldest sons, right? It's an interesting relationship, isn't it? And with between Queenie and Max in the book. Very interesting. Yeah. Lovely. Yeah, well, I'm not going to spoil it. You've got to read it yourselves, people. You've got to go and read the book to see how that pans out. So in Kirklees, we have a strong writing tradition. And we've got lots of authors that we work with as part of Kirklees Libraries, aspiring writers who are starting out on the journey or finding their ways, trying to find their voice, much as you did. And so we always like to, when we have an author, a live, well-published, best-selling author, to ask if there was any advice. I mean, obviously you talked about the publisher who kind of said to you about kind of helping direct you. Or if there's a piece of advice that maybe you were given, or a top tip that you might suggest to anyone that's kind of wanting to kind of find out. I think finding their voice is a really good way to go, rather than talking about getting published, because sometimes that's an awful lot of luck as well, isn't it? I mean, we talk about this quite a lot when we have authors on. But maybe having to find their voice. Is there any advice that you might give to aspiring writers about how they might do that?
I think try writing various things, different things. I think, I mean, one of the agents said to me, it's a bit of a rarity, a writer, because she said to me, they've got a slush pile in her office. And I said, what's a slush pile? Because I was ignorant as anything back then. And she said, well, it's just manuscripts that people have sent in, and it's 3 feet high. And in that pile of manuscripts, which about 1,000 manuscripts, you will find maybe one. And an agent told me this, who was really experienced. She said, maybe one, and you'll be able to polish it up and it will be good. So that was a bit disheartening straight away. But I think what you really have to do more than anything else is be persistent. Just you will get rejection slips, you will get knockbacks. I mean, I've had some awful, terrible rejections. One lady just scrawled across the front of my lovely manuscript, she's not interested. Oh. I thought, oh, no, the pain. It was
charming.
But you have to just absorb that and say, right, okay, I'll just carry on. I'll send it out again, and I'll keep going. And that's what you have to do. I mean, you might strike extremely lucky and be one of these miraculous J.K. Rowling type people, you know, that absolutely hit the ceiling straight away. But then again, she didn't hit the ceiling straight away, did she? I think she had quite a struggle to get where she was. So persistence is everything, I think, to a writer. And a thick skin is good.
Right. Yeah. It's very similar to actors, isn't it? I think with that, when they go for auditions, it's about not taking it personally. Then it's about it's just this personal. This publishing house probably at this moment in time. This is what rationalise, isn't it? That they're not ready for you, or they're not ready for the. Yeah.
You just don't fit what they're looking for. But just plod on, and you might get there eventually. Yeah.
Interesting. It is interesting, isn't it? It's a fascinating world from our perspective, because we're on the really cushy, the nice side, where we just have these lovely books that just arrive, and it's just nice for us. They just keep coming. But we just, it's always interesting to see from the other perspective, and then those 1,000 pile people's hopes and dreams, isn't it? In a sense, this is their dream job as well, isn't it? So it's
absolutely.
It's fascinating.
I think an awful lot of people think that writing is quite glamorous. But mostly, it's really not. It's just getting there to the typewriter, to the computer, to the piece of paper, whatever, and just pressing on, just lurching from chapter to chapter until you get to the end. it's not very glamorous, but it's very rewarding when you see the whole finished item. That's your reward, really. Yeah.
Do you have, I mean, again, I'm thinking about, obviously we're talking to you tonight, and we have authors, children's authors in particular, when they come and they get to see children in particular, and they get that feedback and about how much they love their books. Do you get adults coming to tell you about how much they love their book? Do you get that feedback as well? That kind of, because I imagine that helps with that kind of, almost like writing in your garret or in your back shed, people, all by yourself for all those months to get the book right, and then be able to actually hear what it means to people. Do you get that experience as well? Do you manage to get that from your readership?
Yeah, I do to quite an extent. Yeah, I mean, I attend some of these writers' conferences. Like there's a fantastic one in Harrogate, the Old Peculiar Festival, and there's another one in Bristol, isn't there? The Crime Fest in Bristol, and it's fascinating to actually, we don't get out much as writers. We're sort of just sitting in our little offices, penned in, surrounded by books and anxiety, and to go to something like that and actually meet the people who read the book, and they come up and you sign the book for them, and that's great. I mean, that's really enjoyable, but that doesn't happen that often, really. It's mostly just hard slog.
So this is good. I think this is important because, like you say, I think people sometimes they think it's glamorous. They think it's that it's always, you always hear about the ones that are the bestsellers, don't you? That's it.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to sometimes hear the other side of it. So I do like to think that you are getting that feedback, that we might go onto Goodreads every now and again, have a little peek just to see the ones that got the 5 stars. that kind of thing, that experience where all the rest of them. It's just that pick out the ones that are.
Pick the
ones that you can see that the person's understood what you've said, what you're wanting to get from the book. I think that must be rewarding, I'd have thought, for all that hard work.
It is very nice.
Yeah. So, I wanted to talk about London. So, in Never Go Back. Just keep showing people that lovely cover, so I can just have another stroke. You see, we cover our books in libraries. We don't often get them in this nice, we put plastic on the top so they last long, because we don't often get them nice and fresh like this. I'm getting a little bit too excited, I know. So in your Never Go Back, London, not all the action happens in London, but London it's almost like a character in itself. Do you have a kind of I don't know, and I think that London appears in your other books as well. Does London, is it somewhere that you enjoy writing about? Is it somewhere that you is it where you're comfortable writing about? Is it where you've kind of got that knowledge that makes it easier to write about? Or do you enjoy just writing about other places as well? Is that, or are you drawn back to London?
Yeah, I do love to write London, yes, in particular. It just has always fascinated me, and I love to go there. But I do, I mean, in Never Go Back, there is Long Island, isn't there? I think Montauk, Annie Carter's there, and Max is in Mallorca. That's another great love affair of mine, Mallorca. I love it. I love it. I would go there and stay there, really. But but London, fabulous. I enjoy it. I really do, and I love to write about it. I really do.
So, in particular, is it because obviously there's, again, with the gangs and that kind of 60s history, is it there's some of the social history as well as the place, but is it that kind of social history that interests you as well? Is it that?
Yeah, I mean the craze at that time period with the 60s and the craze. I mean, it's just so glamorous, isn't it? It's like just so edgy and fabulous. I love all that. I really do. Terrible, really. I mean, I suppose I shouldn't, but I do. It's fascinating.
Well, people are drawn back to it. I mean, this is why there's so many films and so many programs that and people watch them in their droves. It's a interesting period of time, isn't it? Is this?
I remember seeing Tom Hardy playing the twins, playing each. Brilliant, absolutely marvelous, really good.
I just remembered Barbara Windsor popped up in the book as well, or at least her name, didn't it? I just remember that. Yes, that's like, oh, Barbara Windsor.
Yeah, she did. That's right.
So London, and I did enjoy. I thought that you captured that just that elements of London. I felt that if you weren't from this country, I thought that it would give you that kind of, again, that non-glamorous side to London as well. That kind of, that, you know, which every city has. I mean, I live in Leeds. It has its non-glamorous sides as well. But I thought you captured those really clearly as well. I enjoyed that. And that kind of, especially the stuff in the 60s with Queenie and the boys growing up, and that kind of, that kind of everyone living on top of each other, everyone knows everyone's business, that kind of elements as well, and what that kind of meant with the gangs.
Yeah, and she was trying to keep a terrible secret, wasn't she? Yeah,
she was. But yeah, I thought that was really well captured as well, and I think it's interesting as well, that kind of everyone living on top of each other, and the kind of the gangs, and got that kind of, you know, that it had that kind of double thing, isn't it? That everyone's not just looking and over, you know, that kind of gossipy neighbour kind of thing as well, but also that kind of more sinister side to it in a sense as well, that you never quite escape. That's what came through as well, I thought.
That's right. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Everyone's been making a notes and making sure you're getting your book ordered. We'll be talking to you about book ordering a little bit later, and borrowing from the library. And I'm going to say, I can see a question just popped in, but do get your questions in. About 5 minutes, we're going to be coming around. I'm going to be bringing Ellie, my glamorous assistant, onto the screen, and she's been doing your questions. So please, I can see her at the bottom of my screen laughing. She's coming on. So please do get your questions in. Facebook, YouTube, just put them into the chat, and we'll bring you onto the screen. Thank you. Okay, 5 minutes. That's your 5-minute warning, people, for questions. Come on now. So I think we mentioned some other authors a little while ago. No, I'm not going to ask that question, because I can see the person who's just put something on Facebook is asking the same question that I've got down. So I'm not going to ask you my question. I'm going to pick a different one. So don't want to pull Karen's glory there. So so you mentioned right at the start that you had started another book. So I'm really intrigued. So you're on tour at the moment. On tour again, that makes it sound very glamorous. You're sitting at home, and I'm sitting at home, and we're talking. This is on tour as it gets. So promoting Never Go Back. So how soon, when you've finished, you've given over to your editor that kind of last version, you've got all your bits of paper and everything into the right order, and you've passed it over, how soon do you give yourself before you start writing your next book?
I take about a month off. I just do nothing really, just sort of potter around the house, go away if I want to. I'm just generally just chill out and not think at all. And then after about a month, I want to write something. So I'm back in the office, and I'm saying, I'm going to write something. I don't know what, but something's going to come. And for about a week, nothing comes. And you think, oh, I see. Well, let's have a think about this. And then finally, something trickles through, and you start again. It's quite a continuous process, really. So I just have that month to myself, and then I'm off again, and that's it. It carries on until you hand it in. I've got the deadline this year is end of July, so I've got about 5 months to go on this one, and dead heat, and it's going to be close. I think it's going to be quite tight, but it always is. Nothing new there really. So that's how I go.
So how long do you get from the publishers then to write the book then? Do you get given a sort of similar kind of deadline for each one that you write?
Yeah, about a year for everyone. Yeah, it's quite full on. You know, you can't really hang about too much thinking. You've got to get
have the idea and go.
You've got to get on with it, girl.
So, and I'm not putting you off your course. You're writing. You're going to get your book done by July. But if you've got writer's block, then during that, have you got things that you can do to kind of restart your system, or do you just find that you're fine with that?
I've never ever had writer's block, and I think it must be awful. I think, but I've never had it, never experienced it. It just sort of flows gently all the time with me, but I think that's just luck, really. It must be horrible to get that. It must be really ghastly. I think Stephen King didn't he? He was writing The Stand, and he went out for a walk, and he just couldn't resolve this thing, and finally decided that he was just going to blow them up.
in doubt, blow them up. I like it.
I thought that'll work. So yeah, that's what he did. But yeah, I've never had it, and I'm very lucky in that, I think.
Yeah, no, we'll move away from that question very quickly then. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to jinx anyone there at all. But that's really lucky then. So I love this idea that it's just constant, it's like this constant flow. Is it like a voice, or is it just that that you've just got these, when your pen or your fingers go onto the screen, onto the keyboard rather, that it just comes flowing out of you, or is it voices in your head that you hear the stories or the characters?
It just flows, really. I think it just flows out. It's not voices. Thank goodness.
I probably could have described that better, but oh well. Oops.
No, it just sort of comes in overnight, and the next bit comes, and then the next bit, and so on and so forth. Eventually, you're at the end of the book, and you think, "Oh, thank goodness for that."
Oh, is it a relief when you get to the end? Is it? Have you kind of you've finished with that subject? You finished with that story?
Yeah, but then that's when the hard work really starts, actually, because the first draft is quite fun. You're sort of just blistering through it, and it's great. It's just fun, you know. But then you get on the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and by the fifth, you know, the first you love it, and by the fifth, you think, for goodness sake, will somebody please take this away from me? Just have it, will you? Have it. I don't want it anymore.
So that's the editing process, right? And so you work very closely with the editors as well, going backwards and forwards with that then, yeah?
Yeah, well, not with that bit. I mean, I get the first 5 drafts. The 5 drafts are just me, really.
Oh my. Oh.
And then I send it to my lovely editor, and she looks at it and says, well, I would change that. I would do this. And for about 3 days, you think, you can't do that. No. But then you have a little word with yourself, and then you realise she's absolutely right, and she's enhancing the book, and she's doing a fabulous job. So you get the editor's input, then you get the copy editor's input, then you get the line edits, and so on and so forth. And so it's almost about 10 edits from start to finish. It's hugely involving, you know, and very, very full on. I feel
extraordinary. Sorry, it's all fine. It's all fine. It won't happen with this book. It'll be fine. We're all good. We're all good.
Oh yes, it will.
So I'm fascinated that you see that spelling mistake that person pointed out. Then, you know, there's been lots of other people that missed it too. There we go.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And actually, my partner said to me the other week, he was reading Black Widow, my second book, and he said, "Do you know this is all wrong, this bit here?" I said, "Shut up! You mustn't say this.
Don't be doing that. What's that about?"
Too late. I can't go back.
Too late. It's in the libraries. We've borrowed it. No. It's all good. It's all good. Brilliant. Okay. I think we've got through most of my questions now. So we're going to be handing this over to the people watching. So please think of your questions. Get them sent in. And we're coming to you now. So Ellie, I'm going to bring you onto the screen. Are you ready? You ready, Ellie?
Yes.
This is Ellie.
Hello.
Ellie's one of our library apprentices.
Yes, it's been lovely listening to you. So you write a lot of crime and thriller novels. So what sort of books and like genres do you personally like to read? Is it crime and thriller, or is it something completely different?
Quite varied, actually. I mean, my dad started me off loving Alistair MacLean books of all things. I mean, it's a strange thing for me to say, but Ice Station Zebra, Where Eagles Dare, The Last Frontier, I just absolutely lapped at those books. And even Wilbur Smith, River God, the Egyptian. Oh, that is fabulous. I love that. And actually, the Gruffalo.
Everyone loves the Gruffalo.
I absolutely love that too. When I'm feeling sort of wrung out with the writing, and I just sit on the sofa and watch the Gruffalo's Child, and I think, oh, that's lovely.
I think we've just got someone with a little emoji of cuddling a little heart there. I think we're all
we all love it, don't we?
We all love the Gruffalo. We all love the Gruffalo. Absolutely. So that's really interesting. So are there any contemporary authors? Obviously, we've talked about Alistair MacLean, Wilbur Smith, but are there any contemporary authors that you really enjoy or that you recommend? Any recommendations? We always love a book recommendation in the library service.
Terry Pratchett. I absolutely love anything. I mean, particularly the Three Witches, the Weird Sisters, Witches Abroad. I love Nanny Ogg and, you know, Margaret rather, and Granny Weatherwax. I love all that. That's absolutely smashing. I love those.
We miss him so much. Yeah.
But yeah, we do. Such a loss, isn't he? Really. I don't actually get a lot of time to read.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm usually sat at the breakfast table, hunched over a book. I'm reading Brenda Jagger at the moment. Maybe you don't know her. She wrote in the 80s. I think she only had about 6 books published and died, sadly. But she is the most extraordinary writer. She is the most fabulously descriptive writer. You know, I really admire what she does. And that's what I'm reading at the breakfast table at the moment, Brenda Jagger.
Brenda Jagger, there we are.
But on the whole, I don't get time to read. I don't. It's mostly the writing and very little else, really.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to come back to that in a second, but it's really interesting because when we talk to children about writing, I'm wondering about, have I already mentioned this? I've already mentioned this, someone stop me. But when we talk to children about writing, we often tell them the most important thing you need to do is read. But of course, then we come to Jessie now, we've published writer, and the last thing you get the time to do is read,
yeah.
which is...
I mean, I used to, years ago, I mean, I used to read all the time when I was at primary school, always had a book in my hand, just walking along the pavement, I'd have a book in my hand. But as we say now, I just don't get the time. I wish I did, but I don't.
That's a shame, isn't it? Well, you know, from the public library point of view, yes, absolutely. Books, people. Books. Are there any more questions, anybody else? If anyone got any questions, please don't be shy. Be sending them in. Ellie, have you got any more from yourself?
Yeah, we've got some on Twitter.
Oh, brilliant, please.
So this leads on from what you were talking about earlier. If you could tell your younger writing self anything, what would it be? Would you have done anything differently? Would you have made any sort of tweaks that maybe you didn't?
Let's have a think about that. No, I think it just evolved as it was going to evolve, really.
Yeah.
I wrote all different types of things until somebody said to me, write this particular type of thing, and it just came right then. I don't think I would do anything differently, really. I would do it just as I always do it, yeah.
Wonderful. So this is another question. This is about Max and Annie. So is their relationship based on real people, or is it based on something from your own relationships and experiences? No,
it is pure fantasy. But I must say that when I wrote my very first book, Dirty Game, I was just getting involved with my now partner. And it was a huge romance, it was, and maybe that had some bearing on the first one. Yeah, maybe. I think Cliff was actually the model for Max in quite a few ways. Yeah, he's very macho, very masculine. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So we've got one more from Twitter. This is sort of similar, but have your books been inspired by your own life? And what was your inspiration for Never Go Back?
My inspiration for Never Go Back, I think it was just the desire to write another Annie Carter book, because I so love those characters. I really do. I think for a writer, everything you've ever done is in there, isn't it? It's stuck in your brain. All these things that have happened to you as a little girl, as an adolescent, as a teenager, as a young woman. It's all there. You don't forget much at all, and it's all there to tap into when you want to. So that's what I do, really. Yeah.
Brilliant. Do you know the question, Ellie, that our young people always ask authors? We told you this question. Would you want me to do it?
Will you
Do you
do
know
it?
this one?
I think
Yeah.
I think I do know it, but
So this is a very important question, Jessie. The world needs to know. And this is the question that it was a bibliosmiacs with the name that they gave themselves, book sniffers, is this. What's your favourite biscuit? This is what they always want to know. We've had a range.
Yeah. Wow, that's a very difficult one. Actually.
I know. It's an in-depth one. You have to give some thought to this one. Oh, yeah.
This one. I think it's a hobnob, actually.
A hobnob. I love. Is it chocolate-covered hobnob? Are we talking milk chocolate, plain, or just plain biscuit?
Milk chocolate hobnob. That I'm severely rationed on those.
I think we all have to ration ourselves on a milk chocolate covered hobnob. I think life's too short. Too much of a good thing. Too much of a good thing. Brilliant.
Right. It's enjoyable. I'm looking forward to Easter and the Easter eggs and spindle cakes and no, I've got to leave it alone. It's no good.
Have you got a sweet tooth, Jessie?
I'm afraid so. Yeah.
So is working at home by yourself in an office when you're writing, is that hard then?
It's dangerous. I mean, I have a friend who writes and she sort of endless Mars bars all the time. You mustn't do that. So I try not to have drawers in the room. And I try never to buy chocolate because I cannot resist it. It's no good. It's no good at all.
Let's move the subject on. We don't want to tempt you. We don't want to tempt you down that road. Okay. Have you got any more questions, Ellie?
No.
No one sent in. Any you wanted to ask yourself? You've got Jessie here.
I'm not sure. I think it's been really interesting. Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. We've enjoyed it. It's been great.
Yeah, it has been great. So I can't see more questions that we've got on here as well. So Jessie, thank you. That's been a wonderful evening. We've thoroughly enjoyed it. We absolutely have. I could see Elliot's at the bottom of the screen smiling away throughout there. Smiling away, having a lovely time. And it's a chilly, cold evening, miserable outside. We've been able to close the curtains and just talk about books and reading and just how much we all love them, which is, that's what we're all here for, isn't it? This is it, people. So we've got a couple of really good bookshops in Kirklees. And Ellie's going to put, I think, a link up about where you can get hold of Jessie's books as well. Can you put the banner up for me, Ellie? There we are. So we'll leave that up there for a little bit. But there's also Fox Lane Books just outside Kirklees, and there's Read in Holmfirth as well. So do get yourselves down to a bookshop and buy a wonderful copy of Never Go Back. Or we are Kirklees Libraries. Get yourself down to your local library. We've got 24 in Kirklees, and either get a reservation in or get it off the shelf. I think we've got quite a few at Cleckheaton Library. We've got a lot of Jessie's books at Cleckheaton Library. So if you're in Cleckheaton, we brought them all along because we were going to show them all. But of course, we've had to. We're at home. And get borrowing and reading. You're going to really love them. Whiz through them. I absolutely whiz through this, and I love when I can just put everything down and just enjoy a good book and just forget everything else with my chocolate hobnob and my cup of tea. Wonderful. Thank you, Jessie. So thank you, Jessie, for joining us and talking so openly about your writing and your life. And like I say, for those of you that haven't had a chance to read Never Go Back, which we didn't really talk about Never Going Back, but we'll keep that and read the book and then be thinking about whether or not we should all go back or not, or look back in our lives and enjoy reading it. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Stay safe, stay warm, and read lots of books. Thank you, Jessie.
Thank you so much. It's been great fun. Thank you.